What's up, everybody? This is Meet the Competitors for the Retro Gaming League. I am 1forsakengayming. So let me tell a little bit about myself. I've been a content creator for a little over 6 years now. I started off at Facebook, moved over to Twitch a couple years later, and now I've also created a YouTube page about a year or so ago, and where I upload all my Twitch streams as well as my recorded content, such as full playthroughs of video games, first impressions of video games as my just chatting sessions, and I upload most of my streams from Twitch over onto YouTube just to save them if it was a good stream or whatever it may be. I'm a huge game collector, at least I'm trying to be anyway. Last couple of years I've been a huge Sega fan. From anything from the Master System to the Saturn to the 32X, the Sega CD, just going, the list goes on. I do like to play on original hardware a lot whenever I can. I really do not like to emulate very much, but if I have to, I have to. Like if you ever want to do arcade games and stuff like that, obviously you've got to emulate those. But nonetheless, that's what I like to do. As most of you know, I'm a huge Metroid fan. I do have these lovely little plushies right here. This one is squishy. I have 5 of these little buggers that I love very much. Anyway, but yeah, that's a little bit about me. Let's get into these questions. So what was my first game or system ever played? That would be my dad's old compact computer. Used to be before they became Hewlett-Packard. He took me to work one day and he sat me down at a computer, showed me about what he was doing. I was about 4.5 years old, I think at the time. It was 1985, 84, 85. And he sat me down at a computer and he noticed that I wasn't really finding much interest in what he was talking about. So, because I mean, come on, I'm a kid, you know, type of thing. And he sat me down at one of his computers, and because he was a computer engineer. And he sat me down at one, and he plugged in Jaybird for me, which is a knockoff of Qbert. Fell in love with it right away, obviously. And the funny thing was, I remember my dad had been telling me, he left me there for like about a half hour, and he was always telling me, oh crap, you know, hear what level you on? I said, I was like level 3, level 4. And he says, I can't even get through level 1. So I already knew at that point I was going to be a gamer for my life. I guess my dad probably figured that out too. So he put me on another game after that, and it was the computer version of Burger Time. And I just fell in love with that sucker too. And what can I say? It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's because it's the nostalgia factor of being able to play these games. And, you know, and the only other thing that I was ever playing games at the time was when we used to fly back to my relatives in Pennsylvania. And we'd play on the Intellivision. So those are pretty much what I was always playing as I got my gaming life started at such a young age. So what are my top 3 games and top 3 systems? The top 3 games are a dead giveaway for me because if you go back on my YouTube page, you can actually find this out. The only one I haven't done a video for is my number 1 game of all time, which you're about to find out anyway, which I have told before to others in the past. But anyway, my top 3 games of all time are the original Legend of Zelda for the NES, the Guardian Legend on the NES, and the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the arcade. That's easily my top 3 games of all time, just because of what I was able to grow up, just as I was growing up, rather, what those games did for me. Legend of Zelda and Guardian Legend are essentially identical, except for one is kind of like a shmup, shoot 'em up, versus, you know, a dungeon crawler, you know, that kind of thing. But just the fact that there was so much involved with those games and how much fun I can replay those games so many times. I never get tired of them. The same thing with the Ninja Turtles arcade, just how many times I enjoyed going to the arcades and playing it with friends, making new friends out of it. I was so sad when they finally took the arcade machine out of the arcade that I used to play at, and I used to go around trying to find, you know, places that actually did it or still had it. And the Guardian Legend, for me though, was the reason why that game was so popular for me, is just because of how difficult it was at first. you know, and how much of a challenge it gave me. And it's the same thing with Legend of Zelda, trying to find the secrets, trying to find where everything was. And you have these dungeons that you have to go to, and Guardian Legends, it's corridors, which you have to do the shmup part of the game. And then, the dungeon crawler in Legend of Zelda. And then you also have the second quest in Legend of Zelda and the Guardian Legend. You could use the password TGL all in caps, and you could just do the shoot 'em up levels and to challenge yourself, which is very, very difficult. But I love the top-down, you know, type of movement and everything, screen by screen. Both of those games are. And for me, if I were to vote for my top two games, it would be easily they're that close to each other, because if it was a million votes, only one vote would separate both of them, because I love both of those games so much. And yeah, so that's just, those are my top three games. And then for my top three systems, easily, hands down, number one, the NES. It's what I grew up with most of my life, and it just never gets old. I still stream it, probably my most streamed console nowadays, because of Metroid Rogue Dawn, which is a fan-made game of the original Metroid, which I love absolutely to pieces. I have both a Famicom and a US NES cartridge for it, both in physical form. And anyway, second console, the Sega Saturn. I have the good old Baker, who actually got me a discount on getting the console several years ago, and I've just been in love with it ever since. Got one of the first games I got was Nights into Dreams. Amazing game. I've been wanting to play it since it came out in the mid-1990s. I finally got to play it a couple years ago and just fell in love with the console, not just the game, but the console itself. Being able to play the Street Fighter games with basically, it was almost like Dreamcast quality, and among other games, the Panzer Dragoon Saga, probably my favorite RPG of all time. And they're just, then the list goes on. Saturn was an absolute amazing console, and I really wish that it got more love than it did in the US than it actually did. My number three console is obviously the Intellivision. It was also what I also grew up with my grandparents and everything. We had one at our house at home eventually, and just the simplicity of the games and everything. And it's just, there's just so many games on there, like Night Stalker, Demon Attack, things like that, the games like that, and poker and blackjack. I mean, the list goes on. I played so many games, so many awesome memories that I've had with that console, and I wouldn't change a thing. I was really, those are my top three consoles and my top three games. Okay, what is the one game that I despise? And that is a very, very interesting question, but my answer is always the same, especially since the early 2000s, and it's Record of Lodoss War for the Sega Dreamcast. I was such a fan of the anime series during that time, the early 90s and everything, to finally see that they were going to make a video game out of it. They tried to make it like a Diablo-style type game, and it just failed across the board. It looked nice, don't get me wrong. The animations, everything was spot on. But the challenge of the game was a little too much. The hit detection was off. The sound effects were absolutely ridiculously loud for no apparent reason. For some things, like for example, thing that comes to mind is when you're wearing boots, or you get like that are like metal. When you start walking, even through a field, it would start be going like a clang, 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 clang. It wasn't like soft or anything. It was loud. And then you have to imagine this is like your upgrade to your armor and stuff, and you're having to walk through a field like everywhere with this noise. No, that's just one of the nuances of the game. As I said, the hit detection was bad, and other than it looking pretty and all that stuff, it just failed across the board to try to do a Diablo clone. And I really, really wish they would have done a lot better, because I was such a fan of the series. But I despise the game. I strongly urge you to stay away big time from that game. So, what got me into streaming? We'll go back to 2019, actually. Um, I was at work one day, and I was actually got to work a little bit early, and I was just scrolling through Facebook and everything, and I happened to see a stream. It was actually a one coin only. Some of you may have heard him before, good old Ricky. And one of his other friends, Headlock Gaming, Dwayne, was also still part of the page at the time. Just kind of grew on me, and I really liked what they were doing. They were playing retro games. They had their, whatever Wednesday type of thing, and I even signed up for a subscription so that I could put my own games in there, my own selections, and which he ended up playing for a while. And not all my games were pretty much hits. He enjoyed it was one of the first times I remember mentioning the Guardian Legend, and he fell in love with that sucker. I don't know if he's ever played it fully to this day, but he said he definitely wasn't going to be interested in playing it. But anyway, regardless, that's what got me into it. Just watching them play these retro games, I said, well, I wonder what it'd be like to actually do that myself. So, yeah. And I just, from there, I also met my good friend, the Retro Game Mage, who actually no longer streams anymore. He actually doesn't really have much of a presence on social media whatsoever. But, we became friends, and he's the one that got me started because he helped me with my first overlays, my first, star screens, bit screens. He was my contact for all my new stuff that I got over the years. And yeah, I mean, he was that's how we became friends. It was kind of like a business / friendship, type of thing. But after a while, our friendship kind of blossomed a little bit, and the rest is history. And I still follow Ricky to this day. I still follow Headlock Gaming to this day. Not going anywhere for those guys, but all three of those pages were part of the reason why I started streaming, and I will continue to create content. So what got me into the Retro Gaming League? Actually, it was the end of season 5. I kind of got I have a group chat with my close friends that are part of my page and all that stuff, and they really got me interested in starting. So I said, when season 6 comes around, sure, why not? I really, really had a lot to think about in order to join something like this, because I never knew what to expect. But a lot of people were praising my skill in terms of these video games and these classics and everything. And I said, all right, well, maybe I'll just give it a try. And so they pushed me. I was able to get my hands. Luckily, the season 6 was the arcade machine, or the all arcade season, and I was able to get my hands on a RetroPie, which had all of these games that I needed to play. So it made it a little bit easier for myself, although I did have to end up emulating a couple of games that season because it didn't translate very well onto the RetroPie. But nonetheless, that's what got me started, and here we are now. I'm an actual judge for the league, and don't intend on going anywhere anytime soon. So what do I enjoy about the Retro Gaming League? The biggest thing that I like the most is that all the different games that we play, all the bringing back, whether it's a classic game or we play new ones, like for example, this season, there's quite a few games I've heard of before, but never even heard of. And I get to play them, one of them being Jim Power. Another one was Mr. Gimmick. And even in previous leagues, they were just going back and forth, playing these different games. Classics, I said classics are ones that I'm pretty sure maybe nobody has heard of. And it just makes it that much more fun because you get to find out about these games together as a group of people. And whether it be a little bit of banter across the board, having a little fun, little back and forth between each other, just watching someone have a really good run, or or for me, for example, was winning last season in season 8, being in that moment where everybody's there to cheer you on, and then all of a sudden, hey, you finally have won this thing. That's what it's all about. Enjoying bringing together people with the love of video games, and just have a little friendly little competition about it. And that's what, and playing games that you've never played before, or even ones that you have played 1,000 times. Regardless, we're all having fun together, and to me, that's what it's all about. So what game would I like to see in the Retro Gaming League in the future? And I am going to jump back to the Intellivision games because I love this one so much, and I did mention it a little bit earlier, is Night Stalker. It is a very, very easy game to pick up, and it's just very simple and very fun to play, just about getting the high score and trying to survive, especially once you get to the invisible robot that just blends in with the background. And in fact, the only way you can kind of see it is if it ever goes through the spider web in the top left corner of the screen. It's a lot of fun. If you run it, you only get 6 shots per little gun that you pick up, and then it randomly will put a gun somewhere on the screen once you use up all your ammunition. And it's really, really tough, but it's really, really fun, and I think that would be a lot of fun for the league, and I'd love to see it. But just a hint, if I win this season, we might be playing it for sure, guaranteed next season. Think about that.